If you've been looking for a new or certified Toyota, come be part of the team. With inventory arriving daily, we'll help you find a vehicle that works for your lifestyle and budget. We'll continue to ensure that your next buying experience is as safe and efficient as possible. Our service center is open with easy online scheduling and a quick, clean process to get you back on the road safely. Head to teamtoyota.net and be safe, be strong, be a team. Well, if you are listening to this Phillies Talk podcast, you likely know that the postseason drought has reached 10 years. So goes another season. I'm Corey Seidman, he's Jim Salisbury. And Jim, what a pathetic showing for the Phillies down in Atlanta in this all-important series that they had circled for months on the calendar. They go down, they don't hit, they're swept, and another year ends in disappointment.
Yeah, they went to Atlanta down 2.5 games. And frankly, they rolled over like an IRA. It was a completely dispiriting performance, completely dispiriting effort. And I thought it was coming. I mean, I can't tell you. I thought they were going to get swept. I thought it was a possibility. I can't tell you I was sure they were going to get swept, but I just didn't feel like things were going to go their way. They needed it. They needed a sweep, and I just didn't think they were going to get it because Sunday, Fan Appreciation Day, they were shut out by the lowly Pittsburgh Pirates. And honestly, they kind of looked like a dead team that day, a team that had run out of gas. And I just didn't think they could muster enough to get over the Braves down there being 2.5 games back, because the Braves are such a professional team. They're so well led by Brian Snitker and Alex Anthopoulos and Freddie Freeman in the clubhouse and on the field. They're such dynamic young players. I just didn't see them fumbling this away. I thought the Braves could smell it, and I thought they were going to lock it down against the Phillies. And sure enough, they did. Phillies scored just 6 runs in that series. A couple late home runs on mistake pitches. That's fine, but they were completely manhandled in that series. The Braves pitched very, very well. The Phillies got a couple good starts. Nola's start was a quality start. Technically, it didn't get off to a good start, but battled through, gave him 6. Wheeler was tremendous, but Charlie Morton was better. Max Fried was better. Ian Anderson was better. And the Braves are better. And looking at Thursday night's clincher, I thought there was a lot of symbolism in that game. The Phillies season gets off to a start with so much promise and optimism as they sweep the Braves. 6 months later, though, the Braves sweep the Phillies to extinguish their playoff hopes and basically extinguish their season. You had Austin Riley, MVP candidate, belt a very important home run. He was a guy that was on the board in 2015 when the Phillies drafted Cornelius Randolph. He went like 30 picks after Randolph. Ian Anderson obviously was on the board in 2016 when the Phillies selected Mickey Moniak. So in addition to drafting better and developing better than the Braves, so that's an example that the Braves obviously have drafted and developed better than the Phillies, but they've also made better trades. Dansby Swanson had an RBI double in Thursday night's game. He came over in a trade. Ozzie Albies had a RBI triple. The Braves have had more dynamic international signings than the Phillies. So in a lot of ways, Thursday night's game really spotlighted some of the areas in which the Phillies trail the Braves, and ultimately the biggest one is in the win-loss column. The Braves are going to the playoffs. The Phillies are going home for a 10th straight season.
Well, down the stretch here when it's mattered most, the Phillies just didn't do enough hitting. I know that they had a couple big nights here in September offensively against bad teams like the Cubs or the Pirates, and they had some big comebacks again against bad teams like the Orioles, Pirates, Nationals, and Cubs. But, when it mattered most, when they went and they faced good pitching like Charlie Morton and Max Fried, the bats just weren't able to do enough. And Bryce Harper, who had carried this offense for months, he was probably due to have a couple bad days in a row. It was going to happen at some point. I mean, it's baseball. Nobody's perfect. And there was a point in this series and before Andrew McCutchen's home run Thursday night where the Phillies were 9 for 81 in the series, hitting 111. They finished the series hitting just 138. I would say that, a big storyline here down the stretch is that behind Bryce Harper, there just was not enough protection. JT Realmuto had a decent season, but it was not an exceptional season by any stretch, offensively or defensively. Some of that was injury-based. Some of it wasn't. Yes, the Phillies missed Rhys Hoskins down the stretch too, but I just wonder, like, with a healthy Hoskins, would this be a playoff team, or would they still have fallen a little short?
Yeah, the lack of protection behind Harper in that 4-hole was a big problem. They really missed Rhys Hoskins. They really became susceptible to left-handed pitching down the stretch. So, it could have been a different story with Rhys Hoskins. I don't know, but it certainly could have been. They would have been a better team. And, it could have been a different story if they had Zach Eflin. They bring in Kyle Gibson to be the number 5 guy at the break. And you're like, hey, they got a little bit of a semblance of a rotation coming here. And all of a sudden they have to plug the last month with the bullpen because they lost Zach Eflin. So there's a lot of ifs and buts. Andrew McCutchen, to me, said it the best after Thursday night's elimination. He said it was in our hands and it slipped away. It was in their hands. They went on their best run of the season, won 8 straight to open the month of August. Took over first place by 2 games on the Mets, 2.5 on the Braves, and subsequently lost 11 of 15. Right about the time Hoskins was getting hurt, and at that point they missed Eflin, and then they became a one-man show with Harper. And you're right, he can't do it all the time. 0 for 11 in that series. It hurt. It wasn't the complete reason they lost that series, though. If it wasn't for Bryce Harper, that series probably means nothing to begin with. So we'll see what happens with the MVP vote. I think he's still strongly entrenched in that race. He's got 99 runs scored, 99 walks to go with his monstrous slugging numbers. I would imagine he'll play at least a couple of games over the weekend, try to get those milestone numbers. But we'll see as they move on to Miami here.
Yeah, they moved down to Miami. It feels like an appropriate place to end the season, given how lifeless the Phillies have looked this week. I mean, that's kind of the vibe that stadium gives off. This series won't mean anything for the Phillies, but Ranger Suarez is still slated to pitch Friday. You think that as we sit here on Friday morning, Zach Wheeler is still going to make that final start on Sunday?
I don't know. He too is in a race for the Cy Young Award. He could go out there, pitch 4 or 5 innings, and lower his ERA a little bit. He also go out there and pitch 4 or 5 innings and raise his ERA a little bit. He could go out there and pitch 4 or 5 innings on a heavy workload, already leading the majors with in innings pitched, a career high, over 210 now. He could go out there and risk injury. If I was running the team, I would shake his hand and say, job well done, guy. Job well done. Thank you for everything. You pitched your ass off. You helped keep us in this thing. You got 3 more years left on your contract. We need to break this drought. We're going to start your offseason right now. Stretching, conditioning, recovery, whatever the heck you want to call it. Get into that offseason program, come back next year, and make another chase for a Cy Young. I don't see any reason to put him on the mound except for personal gain. And this is a team game, and you already suffered the ultimate indignity in bowing out 10 years in a row here. So I would end his season, but I wanted to ask that question to Joe last night, but in the Zoom world, sometimes you only get a quick shot, and I couldn't get back into the line of questioning after that game, but curious to see what's going to happen. I also think Wheeler deserves the respect to have some input in that decision. But I would come down in the side of advocating and maybe encouraging him to, put his gym trunks on and his shower shoes and sit in the dugout and watch Sunday's game.
Well, it was a great season for Zach Wheeler, great season for Bryce Harper, great season for Ranger Suarez, but really nobody else on the Phillies roster this year. And they have a lot of holes as they enter another important offseason. It's going to be the first full offseason where Dave Dombrowski can really put his fingerprints on it. And he's already started to shake things up in the front office. There was the big move this week, hiring a new minor league director in Preston Mattingly. What did you make of that?
Some of the most important positions in your franchise are, general manager or club president of baseball ops, which Dombrowski is. So he comes aboard in December. He's new. Joe Girardi, 2 years in. I mean, the big league manager is a crucial position. And, and after that, your farm director and your scouting director are just huge to a team's to where a team is going. They have a relatively new scouting director, and Brian Barber came aboard 2 years ago from the Yankees. I like the work he's done in 2 drafts. One of them was an asterisk draft. They only made 4 picks because of the pandemic in 2020. But I like a lot of the work they did in the 2021 draft. But it takes time to find out. And they've had some real poor drafts here, really stretching over 15 years that have really hamstrung this team. Just have not gotten enough out of their number 1 picks. And you can't miss on your number 1 picks. They haven't gotten enough out of their number 1 picks really for a decade plus, like 15 years. I mean, you look at going back to Joe Savory and Greg Golson and Shane Watson and Cornelius Randolph, Mickey Moniak, Adam Hazley, Jesse Biddle, probably missing some here, but other than Aaron Nola, can't think of an impact number 1 pick. Certainly Mick Abel, number 1 pick in 2020, and Andrew Painter, the number 1 pick in 2021, seem to have the ingredients to be impact guys, but it's going to take a while on the development curve, and that's where scouting goes hand in hand with player development. I mean, you need to go out and get those raw ingredients and inject them into your system, and now you have to have a player development system that you trust that can take these talented young players and make them major leaguers and get them to the big leagues. And the Phillies have failed on that front big time as well. For the most part, we've seen some recent examples. Promising guys like Scott Kingery have not panned out. Hazley has gotten some shots, has not panned out. I think people will tell you Moniak hasn't developed enough. I mean, maybe that was they overreached there on the pick. Alec Bohm has had his struggles, though I still think there's a lot of talent there, and I believe in it. But clearly, even Dave Dombrowski admitted a month ago when he started blowing up that minor league system that they haven't done a good enough job there getting impact guys to the major leagues. Certainly Rhys Hoskins is homegrown, and that's a feather in their cap. And the way the team missed him this year down the stretch does tell you there have been success stories down there, but not enough of them. So Dombrowski blew things up. They have a lot of problems down there with clashing philosophies. Experienced instructors, old school instructors have been run off. Replaced with what I call technicians, guys that are more devoted to the science of developing players from a scientific and data and technology viewpoint. And there has to be a mix. That stuff is very valuable, but there's also no substitute for on-field repetition, for game repetitions, for struggling, for picking yourself up, for going out there and having good weeks and bad weeks, and then getting in the laboratory, which really should be the field at 2:30 in the afternoon, working on things and seeing it get better at 7:30 at night. So they have shaken things up pretty good down there. They've now they've subtracted 3 high-level, high-ranking members of the player development department, and they hired Preston Mattingly this week from the San Diego Padres to lead player development, be their farm director of player development, whatever you want to call him. He's got a big job. First of all, there's not enough talent down there. That's reflective of poor player procurement. Not enough guys coming into the system through the draft and international signings. Not enough quality there. So, but now they have to do a better job developing. He has to unite these kind of warring factions down there, the old school versus the new school. He has to build a staff that I think needs to feature teachers over technicians. And we'll see if he can do that. To me, it's a very, very big job. Like I said, not enough talent there. So that's reflective on the people that are bringing them in. But, not enough, not doing a good enough job developing these guys. My concerns is, though he seems to have great credentials, a great resume, seems to be a really big-time prospect, smart, creative, baseball guy, comes from great baseball bloodlines, has worked in the front office for progressive thinking organizations, played pro ball. I see more of a history or a background in evaluation and game planning, which he did for the Padres at the big league level, advanced scouting, things like that. And that's all well and good. All that stuff plays into player development. You need to be able to evaluate a player so you can make a decision. Okay, he's never going to get there. It's time to release him. You need to evaluate a player so you can say, okay, he's mastered this level. We need to move him. Okay, so you need to evaluate a player. Where do we start this guy? So player evaluation figures into the farm director's role every day. But player development is a different, a different undertaking. It's a different discipline, and I don't see really a player development background there. So there's going to be some learning curve for him, and honestly, that concerns me because we've seen a lot of inexperience come into this organization, and a lot of learning curve applied, and to me, that's slowed things down. So this is a team that needs to make a quick jump. They haven't made the playoffs in 10 years. They're falling off the radar screen in their own town in terms of what the fans are paying attention to. I just think you need quick improvements. I think that maybe pointed to the need for a more experienced candidate, but they do have a very experienced guy, Dave Dombrowski, one of the most experienced in baseball, running the show. He feels confident in this guy. Give him a shot. We'll see what can happen. He's got a big job. Like I said, he's got good credentials. I see, a hole in player development, but that doesn't mean he can't fill in that hole quickly with support from, guys like George Volandia, who I think is a very quality baseball man, who I think needs to have a big role in player development. He's familiar with the system and needs to support this guy. We'll see what happens. But, I'm going to reserve judgment for a while here while acknowledging he seems to be a really good prospect.
There's a ton of offseason ahead, and this offseason could end up being even longer than a typical one because of the uncertainty over the collective bargaining agreement. So we're going to discuss at length, the different positions the Phillies need to address, the holes that they need to fill. But I'm just curious, as we sit here on October 1st, what you think the number one priority should be for the Phillies this offseason. Is it adding another big bat? Is it firming up the defense, which cost them really all season? Is it adding relievers in bulk? What do you see as the biggest area that Dave Dombrowski needs to address?
Wow, all of the above. I still think he needs to churn and develop a bullpen that's dependable and continue to bring in back-end guys that can lock down games. I think the need for a big bat or two is huge. It would be great to get a guy like Adam Duvall, I think, to play left field, or Chris Taylor to play left field, or Nick Castellanos.
That's the one. See, I think Nick Castellanos would really make like a huge difference on this lineup. Bringing a big right-handed bat like that who hits for average and power, that would give you some actual legitimate protection for Harper. His contract situation is he has $34 million remaining over 2 years, but if he opts out of that, which he can, he's going to cash in this offseason. So that was a guy that I had circled for sure.
Yeah, it's a good year to opt out on. He's got some history with Dombrowski in Detroit. He'd be a good one. Duvall, man. Duvall would kill this ballpark. And he's better defensively than people think. I love Chris Taylor, the energy, the production. They could use a leadoff man. I think Taylor's hit leadoff at times. I don't know that he's a pure leadoff guy, a little bit of a free swinger, but they really could use a leadoff man, center fielder. They could use a big bat in left field. Just because of all, shortstop to me is a big hole. What are you going to do with Didi Gregorius? He signed for another year at $14 million. Do you move him to third base where maybe you can mask some of his range problems? Possibly. Then who plays shortstop? Is Stott ready? He had a good year, good prospect. I tend to think he's probably not ready to throw into the fire in April. And I hear, from people who watch him all the time, that he may be more of a second baseman or a third baseman. And you bring back Freddie, who frankly did not look good, but I think he's playing hurt. And then what do you do with Alec Bohm? You need to have some young players in your lineup that are low salary guys because you have top heavy payroll. And Bohm still has promise. Is he your third baseman? Is he your first baseman? I don't know. Is the DH going to be here? Is Hoskins going to be a part-time DH, part-time first baseman? So it's going to be fascinating, and it's going to be impacted by, we don't know if there's going to be some type of work stoppage, what that's going to do to the free agent market, what that's going to do to trades. Will spring training even start on time? We're going to find out. But yeah, this offense has been so streaky and so inconsistent, and you're so built around Harper. It would be great to have more. It would be great to have more above and below Harper. I haven't crunched the numbers in the last couple of weeks, but the last time I did, they had the lowest leadoff from their leadoff men, the lowest on base percentage in the majors, and from the number 2 men in the batting order, like the second lowest on base percentage in the majors. I can recrunch those numbers, but I'm pretty sure they probably haven't moved at all. So in other words, they're really, really low in on-base percentage in the first and second spots in the lineup ahead of Harper. It would be great to augment ahead of him and behind him. Table setters that, potential runs that he could drive in, and a little more protection and thump for him or behind him, because he gets on base a lot. It'd be great to have a Castellanos or a Duvall to help clear those bases in the 5-6 area of the lineup. We still have Hoskins back. You still have Realmuto coming back. You can slide Realmuto into a maybe less pressurized role in the spot in the batting order. So, yeah, Dombrowski has a lot of work left. I still think close is an issue. That's one of the reasons I really liked the idea of possibly getting Kimbrel, because it was going to give you a lockdown guy this year and next year, because he was signed for 2022. But a lot of decisions to make on internal guys that are going to be holdovers, like Bohm, like Hoskins, like Gregorius, and a lot of decisions that they have to make on who to bring in, because Dombrowski has sort of a 2-pronged task here. He's trying to build a better baseball organization. Clearly, he's got a lot of focus now on the minor league side and player development. But he's also trying to juggle this other thing and not slip into a rebuild. He can't slip into a rebuild because they're just so top heavy with Harper, Wheeler, Realmuto, big paychecks, and teams with rebuilds, or teams that are in rebuilds, they don't have those guys at the top of their roster. They get rid of those guys, and I don't see the Phillies getting rid of those guys. So he needs to continue to add some underpinning under Harper and Realmuto and Wheeler, Nola, Hoskins, to support that group to get them over the hump next year. So you might be rebuilding the underpinnings of your organization, but at the big league level, you still try to win, and they still have a long way to go to catch the Braves. The Marlins are getting better. The Mets, they're going to be a factor. They've had a very disappointing season. They're not going to sit on their hands. The Nationals seem to be entering a rebuild. So there's still a very challenging division, and the Phillies need to improve their overall organization this winter, and they also need to improve their big league roster, because so much focus is on that big league roster. In 10 years not making the playoffs, it just stings. It just stings. I'll tell you what, there's not a person down there at One Citizens Bank Parkway that is not embarrassed that this market size, with the payrolls they have carried, 200+ million the last few years. They had that little pocket where they dipped during their rebuild. And then, 12, 13, and 14, they were number 3 in payroll behind the Yankees and Dodgers. This team spent a massive amount of money the last decade on the field, on analytics, on everything else, and not seeing anything to feel good about in terms of, playing in October at the big league level. And that's what matters. That's why you play the game, to win at the big league level. Joe Girardi said that last night. It's all about winning. And when you don't win, his expression was, you feel extreme disappointment. And I'm sure extreme disappointment is rippling through this organization this morning. And it should be. It should be, because market size like this, with the some of the talent on this roster, they needed to be better, but they didn't pick up the ball. Defense, they blew a lot of saves in the bullpen. They had a sporadic offense. Guys like Aaron Nola had disappointing seasons. I mean, I look at that loss when Nola pitched the other night. He had all these games with one bad inning. So they lose the middle game down there in Atlanta. He has one bad inning. Odubel Herrera kicks the ball in center field. It was a bad play, cost them runs. So they played, they had the Aaron Nola one bad inning syndrome, bad defense, shoddy offense, bad bullpen work. It was sort of microcosm of the whole season.
You referenced the big payrolls at the beginning of the decade in 12, 13, and 14, and it just makes you realize, like, wow, so over the last 10 years, as the Phillies have been missing the playoffs, that's 3 years you mentioned at the beginning where they were a top 3 payroll. This season, they had the 5th highest payroll in all of baseball. Last season, they had the 8th highest payroll in all of baseball. So that's 5 out of the 10 years of the quote-unquote like rebuilding process that they've had a huge payroll and been unable to make it work. That just adds even more insult to injury. I mean, it's not just that this team fell short. It's that it fell short while going out and getting huge free agents and getting big performance from some of those free agents. But, I guess it all circles back to not being able to develop enough of the young, inexpensive guys on your own.
Just not, they're just so top heavy. Harper has been, he's been as advertised. He's been a difference maker. He might win the MVP award, which, it's just to feel like you wasted another year of his prime. It makes you, it's infuriating, I'm sure, for people who run that team and for people who care about this team. But it just shows you it's not a one-man game. It's not, I mean, you follow the NBA, one player can really take a team to big heights. It doesn't happen that way in baseball. You need a full roster, and there's such a drop-off on their roster after the top few. There's such a drop-off in the bullpens. There's such a drop-off. At the end of the season, there was a huge drop-off in the starting rotation. It was a sad situation that they didn't have enough pitching to get through the season. And I've seen that happen to Phillies teams before. I've seen that happen to other teams before, where you just run out of starting pitching because you have injuries and whatnot. I've never seen it happen with 5 weeks to go. I've seen it happen with 5 days to go, not 5 weeks to go. And, they signed Chase Anderson and Matt Moore to be their 4 and 5, and neither one of them could hold that job and rightfully lost their jobs because of performance. Vinny Velasquez, who was on his 6th try, jumps in. He can't hold it. And then so when Zach Eflin gets hurt hurts his knee and is out for the season, you got nobody to come and replace him. Nobody down there could come and replace him. So again, because all the pieces fit, not bringing enough talent into the organization, what you're bringing in, you're not getting to the big leagues and helping that big league club. And for that reason, you're looking at, a bullpen that has had 2 really rough years, having to plug 5 starts down the stretch. It just don't work. So you need more raw ingredients, need to do a better job shining up those raw ingredients, getting them to the big leagues. So you have a team to build around the Realmutos and the Harpers and the Wheelers. And then the guys that are here, like Nola needs to rebound, and he's better than what he showed this year. He needs to rebound and have a better season next year. Other guys as well. And we'll see how Dave Dombrowski brings that all together this winter. I know he's been doing it a long time, and he's been doing it really well. But he's got a big challenge here.
A lot was made this season of the Phillies pitching staff struggles with 2 strikes on hitters. And there's been a lot made over the last couple of years of JT Realmuto's game calling. I wonder how much of a role you think he plays in that, in terms of maybe not putting down the right sign there with 2 strikes versus the pitcher just missing location. Obviously, every single instance could be different, but what do you think of Realmuto's game calling behind the plate?
Well, I think it's fair, very fair to question it. And it has been questioned. You wonder about it. You'll hear people say that Andrew Knapp, the backup, is a better game caller. But I always think sometimes it doesn't matter what you put down if you execute the pitch. And I just see so many pitches over the heart of the plate, and that, to me, that comes down to the pitcher. With 2 strikes, you gotta. The number one thing a pitcher can do is locate. I mean, you can tell a hitter what's coming, that you're going to throw him a fastball. And if you locate it down and away, it's going to be a ground ball to second base or a ground ball to shortstop. If you locate it down and away, it's just they miss over the heart of the plate so often. Aaron Nola misses over the heart of the plate with 2 strikes, 0-2. I mean, so often. This has been happening for several years. So, yeah, definitely fair to point to Realmuto on some of that. They're going to have to, I don't know what the answer is. you know, a lot of times you want that chase with 2 strikes, and they just don't get it. So maybe they have to just go back to trying to locate something old standby, like something like a down and away fastball.
And the last thing I just wanted to discuss here before we get out is Joe Girardi, after Thursday night's game, said that he feels like he failed. That was his quote. I feel like I failed. How much of this do you pin on Joe Girardi? And we talked about this a few weeks ago about his future and whether or not he'd be back for a 3rd season as Phillies manager. What do you make of the job he did this season and the organization's interest in retaining him for that role?
Well, I believe he's coming back. We talked about this a couple of weeks ago. I mean, every indication I've received is that he will be back. I think everybody acknowledges Joe didn't have a great year. And, when the team loses, the manager has to shoulder some of that blame. Just like when a team wins, the manager has to get some of the credit. Gabe Kapler, they didn't make the playoffs here. They struggled here. He shouldered a lot of the blame. He paid for it with his job. And now he's in San Francisco. He's going to win the manager of the year. He's got a 100-win team going to the playoffs. He deserves a lot of that credit. So that's the way a manager goes. That's the way a leader of any group dynamic goes. The leader gets, he's faulted when they stink. And when objectives are reached, he gets backpats. So yeah, Joe deserves some of the blame here. I thought a lot of his bullpen moves were suspect. Sometimes his usage in the bullpen and his rest patterns were somewhat infuriating. That said, he had you have to also look at the personnel he had down there. He's not the reason that Alvarado is an adventure at 101 miles an hour. He's not the reason that Hector Neris gets nervous in the 9th inning. But he put Hector in a spot that worked down the stretch, more of a setup role, and Hector did a good job. Also started throwing his fastball more, it looked like. They, finally using his fastball to set up his splitter instead of vice versa, where it looked like the whole world knew it was just going to be splitter, splitter, splitter. So, I do think the number one thing on a team always is the players, and we blame management and far too often. Players have to play well. Players have to execute. And it just wasn't enough of that on this team. The defense was poor. That's a bad reflection on a manager. But he can't catch the ball for you. But, that's manager speak. They put their hand up and they say, they take the blame because you don't want to put it on the players because that's how you lose a clubhouse. You gotta take care of their egos. And but it was a full team effort here. Joe didn't have a great year in the dugout, and they didn't perform well enough on the field. And Dave Dombrowski only got here in December and was forced to kind of get leftovers and guys like Moore and Anderson. With a full off season, I think he'll have more of an impact, Dombrowski, and then maybe we'll see a better performance next year. But in terms of spreading out blame, it lands in all spots, all corners of the organization. It really does. Because, moves you make in player development 3 and 4 years ago, moves you make in scouting 3 and 4 years ago, they affect you in the big leagues now. So it's a full team effort. It's a full team effort. And to get this franchise rolling and back to where it was, it's going to take improvement in all corners of the organization.
Sure is. Well, thank you for sticking with us all season long. Maybe one of these years, the season will end a little bit differently. The Phillies Talk podcast is not going anywhere. We're going to be really looking at the offseason ahead and recapping what we just saw. I mean, we'll put a bow on this early next week, and then there's a lot to look forward to in terms of who the Phillies need to add, who's probably gone, and what happens around the division leading into 2022. So thanks a lot for listening as always. He's Jim Salisbury. I'm Corey Seidman. We'll catch you next week.